Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving into something totally wild. We're going to explore how the electric vehicle revolution is expanding way beyond that car parked in your driveway. It's actually completely overhauling our urban logistics and the power grids beneath our feet. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at 1. The next-gen EV leap. 2. Managing the fleet demand. 3. The last-mile challenge. 4. Pathways to zero emissions. And 5. Rethinking urban spaces. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The next-gen EV leap, the consumer catalyst. So, let's start at the micro level. I want you to imagine pulling into a charging station, right? And you get all the power you need in the exact same amount of time it takes to buy a quick cup of coffee. I know, it sounds like straight-up science fiction, but this technology is literally already arriving.
Just look at the sheer scale of the specs on the new BYD Z9 GT. It's absolutely staggering. We're talking about a rated range of 643 miles under certain testing cycles. But the absolute showstopper here, it's the 122 kilowatt-hour battery system. When you hook this thing up to a 1500 kilowatt station, it jumps from a 10% to a 70% charge in just 5 minutes. 5 minutes! That's a real game changer.
Now you might be wondering, why should I care about a six-figure luxury EV? Well, flagship launches like this are a sneak peek at the tech that eventually shows up in much more affordable models. This kind of extreme fast charging and long-range efficiency, it's absolutely going to trickle down to everyday vehicles and, more importantly for our cities, to the massive commercial trucks delivering all our goods.
Moving on to Section 2. Managing the fleet demand, powering the scale-up. So what happens when we transition from just one super fast charging car to managing the massive electrical demand of thousands of fleet vehicles all at once? Well, a pretty big problem pops up. You can't just plug in an entire federal or corporate delivery fleet simultaneously without completely frying the local electrical grid. That's where Smart Charge Management, or SCM, comes to the rescue. Think of SCM as this brilliant software brain that schedules charging during off-peak hours when electricity is way cheaper. It basically talks to the chargers, the vehicles, and the utility company to avoid incredibly expensive infrastructure upgrades. And it gets even smarter when we bring in vehicle-to-grid or V2G technology. During times of really extreme electricity demand, this tech allows parked commercial fleets to act like, well, massive backup batteries. By discharging power back into a building, they actually support the local power load. In fact, in a recent test by the Department of Energy, a single parked EV helped a federal building cut its peak power demand by over 10 kilowatts. How cool is that?
Of course, to support all this, billions of dollars in federal and private investments have been rolling out. Just between 2021 and late 2024, we saw a rapid doubling of available public charging ports across the United States, crossing the 200,000 mark. That infrastructure is the absolutely crucial backbone we need to kill range anxiety for fleets, both large and small.
All right, Section 3, the last mile challenge, urban freight and e-commerce.
Now that we've got a handle on the tech and the grid, let's pivot to that massive surge in e-commerce. The endless stream of packages landing on your doorstep. If we follow the geographic journey of a delivery, we start from the broad interurban first mile and go all the way down to the super complex last mile and those critical final 50 feet right in our dense, crowded cities. And here's the big takeaway. Those final congested city legs are responsible for a massive chunk of road transport emissions. Current estimates actually suggest that up to half of all road-based freight emissions happen right there in the last mile.
But here's the catch. Fixing this zero-emission delivery puzzle is super complicated because of who actually owns these trucks. Get this. More than 90% of U.S. trucking companies are tiny operations. We're talking owner-operators or small fleets with fewer than 10 trucks. These smaller guys simply can't afford expensive new electric semi-trucks or the crazy capital required to build dedicated depot chargers.
Which brings us to Section 4. Pathways to zero emissions, industry solutions.
So how exactly do we solve this logistical headache for an industry made up of so many small, moving parts? Well, experts at the Urban Freight Lab look at the solution like a three-legged stool. To hit our climate goals, we need a perfect balance of three things: electrification, shifting modes towards smaller transport like cargo bikes, and space management, which basically means fundamentally rethinking how we use our city real estate.
Looking at that first leg, electrification, the major corporate players are already doing the heavy lifting across different vehicle classes. You've got PepsiCo integrating heavy-duty Tesla semis into their regional networks. And on the flip side, Amazon has already deployed over 20,000 light-duty Rivian electric vans, specifically for neighborhood deliveries to hit their corporate climate targets.
But what about those smaller carriers we just talked about? Well, the market itself is shifting to help them out. We're seeing a move away from the traditional, super expensive own and operate model toward an emerging charging as a service model. This is awesome because it lets smaller fleet operators basically pay a subscription to access ready-made charging depots and even lease vehicles. It massively lowers the financial barrier to entry.
Plus, startups are finding some incredibly brilliant workarounds to the whole infrastructure bottleneck. Take a company like SparkCharge, for example. They provide mobile, on-demand EV charging right out of an electric van. It's like calling for delivery, but for electricity. Services like this completely remove the headache of waiting months for permits and charger installations, letting fleets keep moving without needing their own dedicated depots.
And finally, Section 5. Rethinking urban spaces, the city's role.
If we zoom all the way out to look at how our local governments and the physical layouts of our cities need to adapt, it's a pretty complex reality. You see, because U.S. cities face legal hurdles, mostly thanks to federal laws, in outright banning gas vehicles from their streets, they have to rely on neutral market drivers. So cities are leveraging their huge municipal purchasing power to electrify their own fleets, they're funding public charging networks to support those smaller owner-operators, and they're implementing really strategic area pricing models.
A perfect example of this pricing strategy is New York City's congestion relief zone. By charging fees for vehicles entering busy downtown areas, and often charging larger trucks a higher price, cities subtly shift the cost equation. It's a clever, neutral pricing strategy that incentivizes logistics companies to naturally consolidate their deliveries, use smaller vehicles, or upgrade to zero-emission modes just to save a few bucks.
Ultimately, though, space is the final frontier. All this incredible technology absolutely requires dedicated physical space to function. Cities have got to reallocate that highly competitive curb space for delivery loading zones. They need to build neighborhood microhubs where packages are moved from big vans onto electric cargo bikes. And they've got to integrate parcel lockers. These physical changes are what will actually make our streets quieter, cleaner, and just way more efficient.
So the next time you see a cardboard box sitting on your porch, ask yourself, what invisible, massive logistical leaps did it take to get it there? From a 5-minute fast-charging battery to a smart grid, all the way down to the curb space right outside your front door. The zero-emission delivery revolution is already happening all around us. But the real question is your community prepared for this incredible future? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.